sometimes when
Yeah,
I sit
absolutely.
quietly. It happens often that the body position, it's like the geography, the position it's of sensation and the body, it's really mental.
Absolutely. Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
mental thing. So this is very interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that happens all the time, but it takes an experience like this to realize that it's happening. You know, we always imagine where
Yeah.
we are in space and we imagine the space and then we put ourselves in it all mentally. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
But what is very interesting, it is the same with all of the sense and perception. Even thought, we tend to localize thought in kind of a spaceless space, like, okay, thought, the past is kind of on the right. When I think of the past, I will put naturally on the left and the future kind of on the right, but there is no space. So it's the same with sensation and sound and everything.
Mm.
So, but I'm playing with sound, and it's very strong, this sense of location. Like,
Mm.
like if a car is passing by, like the sound, we there's this strong belief that the sound is really going from one part to the other part of somewhere.
Mm.
So now I'm really watching it, and as I start to see, I want to be sensitive that it's not really moving, it's about sensitivity, it's about intensity more than
Yes.
distance or space.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
like
Yes.
we talked about the other day, like we talk about colors. Like, if an object is small, it seems like it's far, and if a shape is very big, the brain will interpret like very near.
Yes.
And I think what can be helpful is to think about it in terms of intensity. The
Yep.
more a sound is intense, the more you really feel it near. The more it's subtle, the more you really feel that it's very far away.
Yeah, I'm inclined to want to go in the other direction, rather than up to intensity, but from intensity down to subtlety. And yeah, at a very subtle level, like that, the sound is a perfect example. We can only describe it as a sound. And we can be simplistic and say that was loud and that was soft, but there's a million variations in between loud and soft. And we don't just go in a linear way. The sound will go down and up and down and up and it seems like in and out, but again, that's a mental fabrication. Even the intensity of up and down is a mental fabrication, but the subtlety of it is where our brain starts to go, well, that's something moving from there to there and emitting that sound. Like it's crazy how the subtlety of it. Same with, yeah, on my website, I used an example of the color white, and I just took a picture of a white car, and you can just see the incredible variations from one version of white to another version of white, almost to grey, and we call it white. We don't distinguish between the variations of the color, and yet there are a million variations. It's just a constant gradual change from one to the other. And if you went in small increments, there would be more of them. But if you went in big increments, but a big increment contains a lot of, and there's no stopping. At no point can you say that is white. It's just a constant range that we just can't distinguish with our eyes. We don't distinguish because we don't distinguish with our brain. And when we do
Mm.
distinguish, we certainly can't describe because they're too subtle. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and sound is great. Sound is one of the easiest to get a hold of those differences. Vision
Mm.
is really quite difficult because it's so complex. But still, the same thing with the visual. There's so many variations, and the same thing in this light looks entirely different in another light. Yet we say it's the same thing. Yeah.
I think it's maybe easier with sound because we don't. It's easy to see that the sound itself have no shape and form,
Mm.
you know.
Yes, that
But
eliminates
with
a
the
lot of
visual field, but
variables.
with the visual field, we have this strong belief that objects have a defined size, a fixed size. But like you say, if the object, if it's near of my hand, have no size. Here it's very huge, and there it's small. So
Mm.
how big it is? Well, it is the way it is in the moment. So, but with the visual field, it's true that there is this strong imposition of fixed and absolute size. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, it's interesting. I think it's if you can touch this experientially. What happened to me is this whole story about awakening and reaching somewhere just kind of break down almost completely because like you don't have reference points to judge whatever is happening because all reference points it's already in your experience. So you know how you have no idea how to measure and you can even less compare to other people because you don't know what they're
They
talking
have,
about really.
everybody has a
So
different reference point. Yes. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So this is really kind of a freedom, and it just put you in a place of you are just like, okay, so so now this my experience is the only thing I have. So you can really start to really explore directly what is here in the moment. It's interesting. Does that make sense, John Lee? What we are speaking about?
I wasn't paying attention, sorry. So for you guys, does depression come and visit sometimes, or anxiety sometimes?
The short answer is no, but the immediate response is, what the hell do you mean by those things? There's nobody calling right now. Let me. So do I get feelings that I might call excitement? Are they negative feelings? So I would call them depressing feelings. See, so depression implies an a defined state, and nothing can be defined because everything's variable. So do I get feelings that move in the direction of being depressed or depressing? I can't remember feeling that way, but I wouldn't deny it. I wouldn't say that I don't. Maybe if I do feel that way, I don't acknowledge it, or I don't dwell on it, or I pass over it very quickly, and so I don't have a memory of it. Anxiety, it's kind of a bit the same. The interesting thing with this hand operation, I had several people ask me if I was worried about it. So I presume worry is a kind of an anxiety. And I didn't. Even when I was lying on the table and being prepared for the operation, there was no concern. Um, and at one stage, and here's an interesting one, at one stage I had the thought that, well, if something goes really wrong, like one of the things that the surgeon told me was that there's a 1.2% chance that I would get infection in there because of the fact that there's metal inside my body. And if I got infection, sometimes they'd have to open it up and flush it out. And if that happens continuously, there's really only one option, and that's amputation. So I had this thought that, well, if my hand gets amputated at the wrist, I'm not a lot worse off than what I am now, although now that I've only got one hand that will actually work, it's rather interesting the difficulties that I come across. I'm amazed how well I can write with my left hand. I never had that experience before. Um, in fact, I write with my left hand a bit clearer than I write with my right hand when my right hand was not working properly. So that was interesting. But I didn't even feel any anxiety about the fact that maybe I'll end up with an amputation and I'll have a stub at my wrist. It didn't, like luckily I've wiped my bum with my left hand all my life, so that's okay. I did once have my left hand out of action. I've mutilated a couple of times and I had to wipe my bum with my right hand and that was terrible. I just couldn't do it. I would have to develop a whole different level of coordination that I did not have. So it's a little bit like a right-hander trying to write with their left hand. You try and wipe your bum with the hand that you don't normally use. What an amazing experience that is. You find that you can't do it. It just doesn't work because all your life you've used the same hand. So that's rather interesting. But no, so I would say I don't remember feeling anxiety about stuff for a long time either. But I'm sure I have my moments. I'm sure there are moments when I get uh, my wife drove me home and I didn't feel in danger at any point, but I was certainly critical of some of the way she drove, and a bit annoyed about the fact that I couldn't get through to her how to use the cruise control properly. She just couldn't get it. I can't look at that and look at the road at the same time, she would say. And I'm saying, well, you just got to glance. You don't have to look, just got to find where the button is and use it. And after a couple of times, you don't even have to look. You just feel for where it is. You know where it is. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So I don't know whether you call that anxiety, but the short answer is no. I don't think so. No, I don't think. I don't. I'm not saying that that's an outcome of being awake. It's because being awake is less of a thing than those other things. I don't know. No, I don't know. What about you, David? Do you feel anxious or depressed?
No, I don't feel that.
Why?
Maybe the true question is why do you feel that? Why do you feel anxious and depressed?
Yeah,
Maybe not feeling them. It's a natural. It's more natural than feeling them.
yeah.
Maybe.
Because then it sorry, I'm sick. Um, then it spurred on, hey, is the self is the belief in the self arisen again? And then doubt started to arise. But then I worked through the first theta again and it's cleared up again. So possibly, I don't know. What's your answer to that?
I think depression and anxiety it's a war. It's not. It maybe can apply to very specific people, very specifically in very, or maybe in a very short period of time. Maybe it's useful to use those words. But more often, if you just, I am feeling fear now, it's way, way, way lighter than I am depressed, because I am depressed is some kind of condition that you have, that you are, and you have to do something about it. But if you think, oh, I am feeling fear right now, it's more, okay, well, it's happening now. And you don't know, and so I feel it's lighter. And I also, my impression is that people use words in the wrong way. Like to be depressed, it's really something very specific. It's not about having fear or being sad often. It's a very deep, deep condition. And I'm not sure that people use this word. I think people use anxiety and depression very lightly, but
Yeah.
it is my impression.
So if you immediately recognize that you are using a label and that a label is a cover up for something. So if you jump underneath the label and say, what is actually here? Where do I feel what I feel? What I feel. So the why and the how are just useless questions to go to. So immediately you go to what is going on. And if you say, oh, what is anxiety, then you recognize that that's a label and that what you're describing as anxiety is what you need to focus on. So what is underneath the label? What is this? What is the sensations or the feeling? What is the feeling that you're calling anxiety? And that feeling is going to be a sensation plus stories. So immediately you know that you can head towards the sensation, recognize the stories, but not engage with them. And it will be revealed to you what is going on. What is going on? And without doubt, it'll be the stories that produce the feeling that you call anxiety. Right? And it's a trick here. You must definitely not go, well, I've been through the first fetter. I know there's no self, therefore there's no one to feel this, so therefore I shouldn't be feeling it, and dismiss it. Right? That can be a short-term fix to it, but it's not the way to go. The way to go is something did trigger this. What? What is there? So you always look for the what underneath any label that you can come to, and you'll start to see what it is, and that will be identification. That will be a hook back into an imagined self. Right? But when you see through the first fetter, there'll always be remnants to clean up until they get less and less. I don't know that you'll ever get through them all, but you'll certainly get through the bulk of them, and there will be only the occasional one turn up. And that they still turn up for me, 13 years later, they still turn up. But they're occasional now, whereas in the beginning they were pretty frequent. So either of those, something that you label depressing, right, which is as a feeling, there's definitely a downer involved in it. There's that feeling, but there are stories that are associated with it, stories that is stimulated by. And if it's anxiety and it's in the other direction, right? So anxiety can be the feelings of anxiety, the feelings of fear, you can go that far, very, very close to the feelings of excitement. But one you see as a positive and the other one you see as a negative. So often there can be, like excitement can be taken as fear if you habitually think in a negative fashion. So the glass half empty person is going to take the same feelings as fear, and the glass half full person is going to see them as excitement. But there's not a lot of difference between the actual sensations, but the stories attached to them are different. Yeah. So if you feel those things, welcome them. That's great stuff. Good chance to look at what's going on for you. Nothing wrong about it, just remnants to clean up. And when you're sick, like you are now, those things happen easier. And that's a good one. When you're exhausted, they happen easier. So it's a good opportunity. You mustn't miss these opportunities because they might not come back so easily. It's good value when they turn up. And when you're sick, of course, it's pretty easy to feel down about it because you just want to be well. And you say to yourself, I shouldn't be sick. I should be well. I should be happy. Why am I feeling this way? Like there's something wrong with feeling this way, when in fact it's life offering you something, an opportunity. I love my soapboxes. I love getting up on my soapboxes and going flat out with that stuff. I'm not. I've been developing a website off and on for a long time, and I've kind of got it, 2/3 of the way there. I've got the content, and now I'm just looking to polish that up and make it more sensible. And one of the things I've done is I've taken it out and I've put it into pages on my Apple notebook where I can modify it a lot easier. And then I decided, I can save this as a PDF and I can save it as an ebook as well. And I'm thinking, I don't know how many people go to the website. I haven't got a counter on there. I haven't bothered with that yet to see if enough people go to the website. But I wonder if I turn it into an ebook and put it out there for somebody to read, maybe I'll get more people interested in it. And I'm getting close to the point of doing that. It could be interesting, or it could be a nothing. Who knows? Yeah. I'm not talking about publishing it officially. Maybe I'll publish it on Amazon. I don't know. I think that I haven't been down that road, so I don't know how easy it is to do that. But I'm not interested in selling it and making money off it. Just be a good thing to get it out there for people for those who are DIY seekers. The ones who want to do it themselves and just read about stuff. Maybe that might be a good audience. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. And it's interesting. I think I've got about 90 odd pages in it as an ebook, and probably half of those are all about attitude rather than actually doing exercises. Yeah.
One difficulty with exercise, particularly the exercise of any exploration, it's not easy in your own at the beginning, even more at the beginning, because we don't realize how much thought it's overlaying experience. Just at the beginning, it seems like thought is, yeah, of course this is a thought, and of course this is direct experience, and it seems very obvious. But when you go deeper and the subtleties grow, you start to see, oh my God, but in fact, it's everywhere. I mean, it's in fact, I'm always in thought, and that's where exploration. If you feel your arm, you maybe go to your arm and say, okay, I'm feeling an arm, but often you are still in thought because you are connecting to the interpretation that your mind is doing of the sensation, but not in the sensation actually. So you're still in thought.
Yep. Yeah, I get that.
So if that's why it's very important to be sensitive, and by your own it can take more time, which is good, because if you learn by your own, at least you don't need someone else. You are more autonomous, but it takes more time.
Yeah. That immediately takes me to, yes, though it's basically the exercises section of the site that I need to polish up, and they need a lot more pointers about what to look for in them, rather than they're just the bare exercises at the moment. Basically the exercises that LU uses, the hand flipping exercises and the cup exercise that I've introduced, and those things, but they need a lot more setting up so that, yes, you see the subtlety of those things, and then you get the ramifications of them as well. So not just the exercise, but what does it show you? Yeah. That's where I need to put most work. Yeah.
In Elio is specialized in pointing there is no self, okay? Like in a direct way, and it's okay. It's one way to do it, but is not is not the only way to do it.
Oh,
And there is
absolutely.
ways
That's
that you don't have, and there is way you don't approach it directly at all. You just
no,
explore sensation and perception, and at some point you just even don't notice that you saw there's no self because it's just obvious.
yes,
Like obviously there is nothing there.
absolutely.
So
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not sure that this direct approach is it can be taken like very aggressively for the system, like a direct attack somehow. So the defense can come up very, very strongly.
Yep. Yeah, no, I do feel that. I've never gone straight for the no self thing. I always feel that that's something that should become obvious when we recognize what is concept, and that a lot of things fall into the category of concept taken to be real, and then one of those things is the self. But it's like it's if we go straight for the no self, then we can often miss out on a lot of those other things. Like I saw somebody
Yeah.
recently go through LU, and they saw clearly that there was no self, but they still didn't get the ramifications of that. They still didn't see a whole lot of the other things that should have fallen at the same time, but didn't, because it was just so much focus on the no self instead of the other stuff. Yeah. So the recognition that we take so much of our what we take to be reality is we're relating to our image of that, not the actual thing, but the image of that thing that's formed in our brain, and we just take it to be real. Understand that? That's such a hard one to get over, but once it's got over, the ramifications fall really quickly. Everything else that depends on that falls. Once we recognize that it's our image of a tree, not the actual tree that we relate to. It's the same with people. It's the same with everything in the world. The same with ourself. It's our image of it. Yeah. Like for the strength with my arm, when my arm was dead last night, and I could see it in one position, but the image in my mind was that it was in a different position, and that image was really strong. It was like quite amazing that the I could see it was in, and I believed what I saw rather than what I felt. What I felt was it was there, but what I saw was that it was somewhere else, and that was yeah, pretty stark. Yeah.
That's why I'm trying to convince, not to convince, but to propose to the guides that they add more exploration of sensations and perception and trying to give this orientation. I think it's to me it's really uh, essential,
Mm, yeah, I do too. Yeah.
which is direct experience really only.
Yep. So when if we can help somebody have an experience of direct experience, it's almost like that should be enough for everything to fall, because they can recognize that direct experience is so elusive. That's really the story of that experience that they relate to all the time, not the actual experience. And yet it's quite a hard one to get them to see what is direct experience. Frequently you'll see when people go through the gate that thing that caused them to have a shift was the recognition of direct experience. So do you know what we're talking about when we say direct experience, Leonard?
Yes, I think I do. Actually, yeah. Now I don't remember the author. I once bought this book with the exercises and so on. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes. Probably
Yeah.
Greg Good, maybe it was Greg Good does a lot of exercises.
Yeah, and somehow I always thought like, yeah, I have to do all of them, but I didn't do any of them until now. It's just like, I don't know. It just never happens. And I think yeah, that's a difficult one for me. Like this, I mean, I'm the Leonard character used to be very cerebral, and I think it's still um, kind
Yeah,
of a condition. So it's not so easy for me. But recently, without even seeing it as an exercise, I also had some moments where, yeah, it's hard to describe. But yeah, I had like this two-dimensional feeling in my sight, and then also not really, but somehow that's things were coming very close, but not like a movement. It was like suddenly the
yeah,
sense distance, but it was really just for some seconds, maybe.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's enough. Yeah.
And then also, yeah, again when I was like floating in the lake and I was watching the sky, somehow, yeah, the thing is when I describe it now, then it's not really appropriate either. But I mean, retrospectively, I would say it was nearly like, yeah, I had the afterwards I had the association that it was like kind of an in utero feeling that the
Mm,
sky is something like some undefined space that is not distant, and it's like
yeah.
yeah, it's like melted all together. I don't know. Yeah.
Yep, yep. Sometimes people will describe it, and one of my memories of it to describe it would be say it was like it was in me.
Hmm.
Like I was in it, it was in me. It doesn't
Yeah.
make sense, but that's
Um,
yeah.
yeah, but when you say it, it makes sense to me. I mean,
Mm.
it's a description, but it's not the
Yeah,
same as the
not
actual.
literal. That's right. Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Yeah. What about you, Ramiz? Do you understand what direct experience is? Is it something that you have experienced?
I have experienced something, but I'm not sure if it is direct experience or what you mean by direct experience.
Okay, what I would describe direct experience as is that experience that is happening for the really short time, maybe milliseconds before thoughts arrive to describe it or explain it. Right? So it's an experience that does not involve the mind at all. Usually it's very fleeting.
These moments, they are like memories, and well, one of the last experiences I had was like I was doing some emotional work with someone, and I said something that I felt bad about. Like it felt like it was a criticism. I like expressed my opinion about the guiding, that I wasn't relating to it. And I immediately felt bad about it, like I said something bad. And but also I know that they also shared how they were kind of embarrassed about it. And it felt one of those situations where I would like very much to like leave. It's too much to feel. But I also know that it's okay with this person to feel this. It's safe. And it felt like this is like this room that I often just stand outside and I'm scared to get in. And once I'm in, it's like the door closed and there's no way out. I can't escape. And I stayed with it for a few minutes until I started having this experience where, like, from two different perspectives. One, it felt like so much shame, and the other perspective is just energy. It was enjoyable. It was soothing, and it was weird. Like I was able to shift between the two. And later in this day, I found myself in the same space, but there was no story. And it felt like I don't want to go anywhere. Like I want to just stay in this energy. So I'm not sure if this is direct experience.
No, I'm not either. That's really complex, and yeah. But it may be that you're well, you said feeling like you don't want to go anywhere. Now, I can't. Do I describe that as your acceptance of what was happening, or do I? I don't know how to describe that to be accurate. But the fact that you're just present with that and not having any stories, yes, that is very likely that is direct experience. Yeah, the fact that there was no stories is the big part about it. Yes. So, but you did have stories because you said you felt like you didn't want to go anywhere. You didn't need to escape, or it wasn't unpleasant. Was that enjoyable still, that one? Or was there just no good or bad feelings about it? It was just a total, how could I put it? A total this. That's all it was this. You were there and there was no good or bad, right or wrong, here or there, wanting to escape, wanting to stay, nothing, just this. Would that be a better way to describe it?
There was thoughts, but it's like they were not sticking. It's just Like they have nothing to do with the experience.
Okay, yeah. So stories floated by, but that they didn't touch the experience. They were just there themselves. Yeah. So the experience was just the experience, and the other stuff that was there was not really associated with it. It was just around it. But the experience was
Yeah.
just the experience. Would you say that?
The experience was so big that it can't be disturbed.
Yeah. Oh,
Just
okay.
it's like irrelevant.
Hmm. So would you say that there was any kind of revelation that the other stuff, in particular the thoughts that floated by, if they were engaged, that would change the experience, and that change would be some kind of a loss? That's a bit klutzy, but yeah,
I'm not sure how to answer this.
yeah, okay. Yeah, it was a funny question, right? So what I'm saying is, could you see the separation between the experience and the thoughts? You said you could, I think, and now
Yeah.
so what that means, what I'm saying, what that could mean is that the thoughts were an overlay on what was actual. What was actual was a sensation, that feeling that can't be described, but that feeling that was there, and all of the thoughts were an extra, an add-on to that, that may that because you didn't engage with them, they didn't really touch it. But if you had engaged them, then you would be out of reality into storyland, and that storyland would produce its own reality, which is different. Does that make sense? Does that fit?
The story is, I'm not sure what's the difference. Maybe this is just me trying to explain. Um, it's like I touch more deeply into the non-conceptual nature of sensations.
Yes, perfect. Yes, the non-conceptual. Yes, and the stories were the conceptual, something else.
Like the stories and the sensation were so sticky and so like it's hard to separate them. And for a few moments, like there was a gap or something.
Hmm. That's when they weren't sticky, when the gap was in between them. Or go the other way around, you say when there was no gap, they were sticky.
I feel like when it felt enjoyable, it gave me kind of a trust to just stay in the sensations because it was the same sensations that I was struggling with. But the experience, it changed. I don't know how.
So what I want you to see, what I want you to recognize, what this whole thing is about, is recognizing that there is a difference to what is actual as a sense input, and it gets complicated if we include in that the sensory input of our mind. But there is a difference between what is the direct sense input and our interpretation of that sense input. And the moment that we apply an interpretation and relate to that interpretation, we're just in concept land. We're just in stories. So how do we take the direct sensory input in the world, that is things and people, everything, and not overlay it with our stories? Or that's not quite true, not quite accurate, not quite something. But when we do overlay it with our interpretation, we recognize that that's what's happening. And it's not that we can't not do that. We do it, but we can recognize that we do it. We can recognize that there is a difference between our direct sensory input and our interpretation of that direct sensory input. So the direct input is what I'm calling direct experience. That is the unfiltered, unexplained, undescribed input into our sensory input. And then the moment that we can apply a label to it, we're off in storyland, and we're not relating to the direct thing anymore. Now, it's not to say that we need to always just relate to the direct. We can't, because stories will always arrive. But it is a case of recognizing when stories arrive and recognizing that we are relating to our stories about the direct input. And what that means is we don't have identification with the stories. We don't have hooks into the stories. They're nowhere near as sticky. They're nowhere near as important. We don't hold them as fact because we recognize that they are our interpretation of that direct input. That's what waking up is in a nutshell, I think. That's what it's all about. In my opinion.
What's your direct experience of thoughts?
Ask me that again.
What's your direct experience of thoughts?
Okay, yeah, good question. That it is just thought. It contains no validity in itself. It can be seen as entertaining. Sometimes it can almost appear to be useful, but in most cases it's unnecessary. But I still respond to my thoughts. But because I have that primary attitude towards them, the response is different to what it used to be. And what it used to be was that those thoughts could produce extremes of emotion that they don't seem to anymore. Well, that's not true, but certainly not negative emotions like they used to. Mostly now the emotions can still be fairly extreme, but they're usually in a positive direction, which isn't to say that that's appropriate, but that's what it is here. But Tyler will have a different way of looking at that, I guess. What are your thoughts about thoughts and direct experience, Tyler?
I mean, yeah, it comes down to recognizing and noticing thought. It's not as if we can find the difference between thought and direct experience, inexperience. But we know how to distinguish them. I think it's about vigilance. You can't get sucked in if you notice it.
Yeah, I would say it's more about the habit, developing the habit of noticing. I mean, vigilance is right, but we don't want to turn vigilance into a big job, a lot of effort. But essentially, yes, it is noticing that, okay, here's a thought story, and I don't have to take it as literal truth. I can accept that it is an interpretation of something.
Yeah, and I think, I guess vigilance is the habit of noticing,
Hmm.
because you can't choose to notice or be vigilant. Just noticing happens when it happens. And not just noticing a thought and accepting that it's an interpretation and rejecting it, but asking how you know this thought is true. Disproving it to yourself, because 100 times out of 100, if you dig deep enough, you can see that the thought is bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. What thoughts would not be an interpretation, which is, of course, a personal experience based on your own conditioning from experience, conditioning from DNA, conditioning from everything. So is it possible to have an experience that we don't interpret? And my answer would be yes, for 0.005 of a millisecond. But for all practical purposes, every experience is going to get interpreted. So it's not a case of not interpreting them. It's a case of recognizing that we interpret them, and that therefore those thoughts don't have much credibility. yet we do have to give, and this complicates issues, we do have to give credibility to the experience that comes from the uncredible thoughts, because that experience is a real experience, even though it's based on some kind of a fantasy, even though it grows out of those uncredible thoughts.
Yeah, I think when you say it's about recognizing that the thoughts are interpretation, so they don't, so they aren't reliable. I think it's that can mislead people to think that it's about having that thought process about thoughts, when really it's about not believing the interpretation that was thought of. But you can't control whether or not you believe it. So if you have a thought interpretation and you believe it and it creates a feeling, you can't recognize that it's an interpretation and brush it off because you still believe it. So it's just lying at that point. So that's why it's whatever you believe and whatever that makes you feel, you have to get through the feeling first and then investigate, ask questions, because you can't stop believing the thought until you've disproven it to yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, well put. So then what one of the things you said that brings up a question mark that really begs for clarification is, how do you investigate? How do you investigate that, the credibility or it's not incredible, that's the wrong word, isn't it? Uncredible thoughts.
I
So
think the word incredulity, is that?
Yeah, that's
Or
better. Incredulity, yeah. Not incredible though. Yeah. But yeah, so how do you investigate? Yeah, and that's a trick, of course, is because if you investigate a thought with a thought, you're going to get more than a thought as a response. Uh, So investigating isn't really thinking about. It's a matter of seeing what triggered that thought. What was it resting on? What's underneath it? That's how you investigate, rather than just thinking about the content of the thought. That never gets you anywhere but more thoughts. So when you're looking for how valuable, how right, how well, what do you look for something when you investigate? Maybe just look at what is there. But the way I see it, to investigate is to look at the sensation associated with the thought, and that will bring up other thoughts, but they're not thought produced thoughts. They're sensation produced thoughts. Now we're getting to a subtle level of thing. How do we investigate? That's the question.
I've found that the question, how do you know, it's very helpful. Like a child, investigate like a child asking his parents why the sky is blue and why the grass is green. And then the parents can come up with logical explanations, but eventually it always comes to a dead end of, because that's the way it is. And if you can get to that level in your own belief, and you see that the only reason that you believe this is because you're taking something for granted, then that's very helpful. Like with someone I'm guiding now, they say, I say? They describe their experience of unbound being, of something expansive looking through their eyes. There's a feeling of their body being the center of it, and this something expansive expanding into all directions. And then there's so many things there that are taken for granted. So there's all these questions. How do you know there is a space in which there is a center and there are directions? How do you know that you have eyes for something to look through? I think there's all these layers. You can eventually get deep enough that it's like, because that's the way it is the only answer. Because I know that is the only answer.
So every answer they come up with about each one of those things will give birth to another question about how they know about that, and that will keep going until they say, I don't know. It's just my experience.
Yeah.
So the mind shuts down. That's the thing, isn't it? The mind stops seeking. The mind stops presuming or assuming that there is an answer. And then at that point they go, oh, it's just this. Yeah.
But you see, this is where I think it's important again to really explore sensation and perception. And one way to be clear, it's about differentiation, to really be able to differentiate between the experience of thinking, the experience of sensing, and the perceptions. Even if, of course, ultimately it's one thing, and the boundary is blurry, of course, but it can be very, very helpful to really understand the difference and to dive into this very deeply. And I think it can be helpful because it's associated to what Tyler you are saying, right? When you say, okay, feel your leg. Okay, so there is something happening. You go maybe into sensation, but almost instantaneously there is, oh, this is my leg, and this there, and there is the story flowing at the same time, let's say. So then you say, okay, so this is the story, this is a thought, right? But if you close your eyes, the only experience you have of the leg, it's an image, thought and belief, and a sensation. Can you see that the sensation is different than the story, the mental image, and things like this? So try starting to really make difference in your experience can be very useful. And I'm surprised because I realize that some people don't even are able apparently to understand what is a mental image. Like for them, mental image are, I don't know, are object. I have no idea, but apparently it's not easy. They don't recognize what is a mental image, what is a mental construct. They apparently it's the same as seeing. I have no idea, but so it's very important. It's interesting to do that, to make those clear distinction.
So take the example of somebody who feels that they that they're not good enough. You know, that's a classic one that we see frequently. People feel simply that there is something about themselves that is not good enough. Now, it's a really vague thing, isn't it? But the feeling itself is quite quite strong. The feeling that comes from that story is very definite. Now, it's not a pleasant feeling that comes, but there it is. So they have the story, and you take them down whatever road so that they recognise that that's a story, but they still feel that. They still have that feeling of despair, that feeling of wrongness as a result of that, even though they see it's a story. So there is still there's a belief somewhere, isn't there? That's it. There's got to be a belief that it requires something to be different in order for them to not have those feelings.
In that case, right. Yeah, I think because what David was talking about is the importance of differentiating and recognizing, noticing when something is a thought. But what I was getting at is that often isn't enough. Like this person who believes they aren't good enough, they can see how that's a story, but it doesn't break down their conviction in the story, which is where the deeper investigation into how do I know that comes into play, where you deconstruct the belief. And of course, a big part of that is feeling into what the belief in that story makes them feel. So other than the recognition and noticing, there's also the whole world of emotion work, shadow work, which is just feeling, and the deconstructing of that belief through asking questions.
Yeah, of course. I'm not saying that deconstructing belief it's not powerful. I'm just pointing to another path. That's all. I'm not putting value of different way of exploring.
Oh, actually, I think there are
I
two.
think
Sorry,
yeah.
I wasn't saying that you think that it's opposing. I'm saying that it's both, like part of the. You need to employ both. Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of both, but English is very strange. It's very good language, but this word feeling in French doesn't exist, in Spanish doesn't exist. In French and Spanish, you have to say I think or I feel or I sense, or you have to be more precise. And a lot in guidance, people use feeling like it's I feel that the earth is going around the earth. I mean, this is nothing to do with feeling. I mean, no.
Mm.
So this word is sometimes I even guide and say, don't use this word anymore. Use something else because we have no idea what this word means.
It's
But
crazy.
what is useful? Yeah.
I always say a feeling is a sensation plus stories, and that's
Yeah.
But the other
That
one,
makes sense.
the other really weird one we use is we say, "Oh, that doesn't make sense," and it's like we're talking about our mind when we say it doesn't make sense, but we're using the word sense, which of course is not our mind. So that's another crazy one in the English language. Yeah.
But to answer this question of how to deal with the story, with this sense of I think it was unworthy, the example you were saying, or not being enough, right? The result is part of thoughts and beliefs, and the other way you can go, it's you take the sensation, the actual sensation, the tactile sensation of not being enough. You use this word, this concept, and you go into the sensation of not being enough. And one question can be, is the sensation telling you that it's not enough? It's the information of I'm not enough contained in the sensation. And often the answer will be no, right? If they see really no, And by this investigation, if they can really see that the sensation doesn't contain the information, that's where they start to dissociate between the story and
Yeah.
sensation.
Yeah.
And they can work, okay, now we work with the story, with the level of what they believe, and or I will just, okay, so I can really feel this, feel the sensation.
Yeah.
But question, of course, are really key in the process.
Yeah, yeah. So that's really good, but what comes up for me as you do that is that's going to leave somebody with nothing. It's going to leave them empty, so to speak. And what if we take away the reason why they feel not good enough, because they recognize that it's the story component and so on, then there's a vacuum there. So one question I have, like a koan that I have, is if we drop a belief, is it always replaced by another belief?
I
I
don't
think
understand
I think it is. We can't, if we
the
change a
vacuum. I don't understand the vacuum.
so you have a belief. Oh, okay. No, the vacuum. Yeah, okay. So let's say that we are successful in helping them to separate the sensation and the stories, and they recognize that there is no instruction in the sensation that they need to feel unworthy or whatever they feel, right? So that's entirely due to the stories that are associated, and so
Well,
they
this is excuse me, I interrupt you, but um, this is a supposition that you're saying right there. I mean,
say that.
did I hear right that you said that it is the story that is provoking the sensation?
Yes. Well,
Well,
it's a
this is
circular thing too, but yeah, so there is this feeling of unworthiness, right? And then
okay.
when we look at that closely, we recognize that there is a sensation, and then there are stories. And the
Yeah.
stories are what gives the sensation meaning. The sensation itself has no meaning. It is just a sensation. But the stories associated are what turns it into that feeling of unworthiness. Right? That's so those stories actually provoke the sensation, and the sensation gives validity to the stories, and there's a bit of a circular thing going on. So let's say they recognize that that's what's going on. They're still feeling unworthy, right? Because they although there's no reason for them to feel unworthy, they're still feeling unworthy because it hasn't that whole thing hasn't been replaced by something positive yet. Maybe the vacuum will suck something positive in, but essentially that needs to be replaced with something else. And the opposite of unworthy is not worthy. The lack of unworthiness doesn't mean they have to feel worthy, but to get rid of that feeling of unworthiness, there does have to be something that comes in, which
So if I understand you well, from your perspective, there is a belief of unworthiness that is provoking a sensation in the body, and the way to deal with this would be to change the belief in unworthiness into something else. This is what you're saying.
yeah, not quite. I'm not meaning them to change it into something else, but something else will appear to replace the feeling of unworthiness. And what I don't know. I mean, that's much more subtle, isn't it? So they're not going to replace it with a false sense of confidence. Now that would be a wrong road to go down. So they're going to. It's that the lack of unworthiness, that unworthiness story will fall away to be replaced by, well, I would hope something like peace and calmness rather than something else.
I understand. I'm just saying something. I'm just seeing something that we we approach things differently, you and me. It's
Of course,
interesting. For
and
me,
that's the great thing. Yeah,
yeah. For me at the moment, I like to approach it in the way that first there is a sensation always, somehow. There is a sensation, and the mind is building a story around it to justify it, to disprove it, to whatever.
hmm
So the more I am sensitive with the actual sensations, and the more I'm able to hold them, just to be with them, no matter what they are, the less I have to care about stories,
Sure.
because
Yeah,
it doesn't really matter what the story it's about. And
yeah,
there is things in me that have literally disappeared. Pattern, habits, thought habits, addiction are just disappearing. They're just kind of falling away because I'm able to just be with the sensation as it is in the moment. So I'm doing less and less beliefs and thoughts work, even if I have done this for years. I'm not saying that I haven't done them, but where I am right now, I'm saying that really, if you're really able to just be with the sensation, thought doesn't really get triggered. But it is true that if when thought it get triggered, beliefs start to kick in after there is kind of it's a kind of a loop that get energized together. But
yeah,
that's where I think the difference is to me, like to really be with the sensation in the moment is really healing.
sure. Yeah, and I don't disagree with you at all. I would go a little bit further and say that, okay, you say that it starts with a sensation and then there are stories, and I can go along with that. That's true, but I would also say that there are stories underneath the sensation. There are stories. That sensation is there because of a story, but it's a one level deeper. And so we can come in at this at any level if we like. But maybe so if we come into it at the recognition that there is a feeling and that is a story with a sensation, that is a sensation with stories attached to it, and then we approach the sensation and recognize where the stories come in, then that whole thing will change and it will reveal further stories underneath that sensation, which will also have the same thing happening. And if it's just a remnant of selfing, then that'll be enough for it to go. It'll be gone with that first upper level investigation. But if it's resting
Yeah,
on
but
something more
there is
fundamental,
there is a correlation that I don't think it's pedagogic to hold in the mind. There is a causal effect between thought and sensation, which it doesn't. There's a difference between causality and correlation. Maybe
yeah.
if there is a thought, maybe thought react in a certain way. Okay. But to say that thought is provoking sensation and sensation is provoking thinking, that they are causal in a certain way. I think it's not a healthy way to go to exploring. It's more healthy to say there is a correlation somehow, maybe when I
Yep.
feel this
Okay.
sensation, I'm thinking this. Maybe there is some kind of connection. I don't know. Because if you start to break this, oh, because I think this is happening, you have more space between both of them, and you can really
Mm.
see that each dimension it exists somehow in its own bubble.
Yep.
But
Yep. Yeah.
David, I want to ask if, you talk about staying with the sensations and the thought stories falling away, and then things really changed for you. When this happened, for example, could be anything. Maybe in the past there was some kind of depressing thought that created this feeling that you may be labeled as a kind of depression, this sensation that you may be kind of labeled as depression. And then as you manage to stay with the sensation more and the thought falls away, isn't it the case that this feeling that you used to label as depression also changes or falls away?
Yes. I think what changed the most, I like the word more and more about intensity, right? There is sensations which are more intense than other, and there is intensity that the system is seeking, and other intensity that the system want to withdraw, right? Like if I touch a bed and it's very soft, and I go and I lay down, it's a sensation that my system will want to kind of dive into it, right? More easily, like, oh, nice. If I touch something that is very hot and it's kind of painful, or there's it start to hurt, my system will have this tendency to kind of wanting to kind of withdraw from it, right? Because it's too intense for it. So I think to think in terms of intensity, it's kind of more helpful. And there is thought that it's the same with in every dimension. There is thought that you want to dive into it, oh, we are all one, and we start to being awake all together. So this is thought that you feel drawn into, maybe. And maybe the thought that, oh, this is the end of the world, the humanity is going to hell. This is, it's another kind of intensity. And due to your very specific way that your experience is organized, you will have tendencies. But the whole judgment about good and bad, and this is depression, or this is not depression, this is bliss, this is awakening, kind of is falling away into just these events that is here.
I do find that, though, every time there is a belief in a thought, that comes first, and then a sensation comes, which, not that I care to argue about correlation versus causation, but it does seem that way, that every time that happens, it causes the sensation, and as the belief in the thought falls away, the sensation also falls away. That's my experience.
Okay. Well, okay. This is your experience, and fine. I'm not here to argue, but after it depends what do you mean by belief? Because ultimately there is only thinking. There is only non. There is like sensations and thinking and perceiving. It's all belief. There is no sensation per se to be found. So it depends at which level do you put beliefs. If you feel that there is a room, you are already in beliefs. You're already believing that so it depends what do you mean by beliefs?
Can we describe a belief? I used to say, oh, it's a special kind of thought, but it's a lot way more than that.
I don't know. I don't use this word believe because often that's what's been said. That's what you, Tyler, say, and I'm interesting when you say there is a belief in a thought. So who is believing, or what is belief exactly? Isn't it believe a thought in itself?
It's I think it is a kind of a thought in itself. And when we say there is a belief in a thought, it is also quite misleading, in that there's no such thing as a belief, but it's more like when you say something, or you think something, there is a different flavor if you feel it's true or if it's false. And when I say there's a belief, yeah, you can say.
I was just going to say, then it sounds like a belief is a feeling. It is a sensation with stories. Because there is definitely a feeling component to a belief, isn't there? We feel it is true. That's the words we use. So a belief is an emotion. I hadn't thought of it like that before, but that's what's coming now.
It seems to me it's like I believe it's just a thought that has like a gravity, and I'm imagining the gravity is just like the outer atmosphere is just the thoughts, and below it the sensation, and we can like pop in and out between this like gradient of thoughts to sensation, and at some point there is a kind of a free fall, like the gravity sucks you in, and
Yeah. You generated for me a fantasy that a belief is a universe.
yeah, it's like each thought is like its own planet. Things or
But you
maybe the
see,
identity.
can we agree on something maybe? Because Ramis, you say each thought has its own universe, its own gravity. I don't understand, but I heard each thought, right? But it's more an activity, because we use thoughts, we use noun, and it's okay. I'm not I'm not doing police, but I'm just because we are going deeper. So, but it's more an activity, right? It's more like it's more verbic. So it's more like there is activity of thinking. It's a stream always. There's a thought, oh, I'm thinking about a horse, and after, oh, there's another thought, I am thinking about a horse. And after there's another thought, oh, I shouldn't be thinking about a horse. It is always one thought. Even if it seems to get bigger, it's always one in the sense that it's the same streaming of thought constantly. I'm zooming in, zooming out, zooming here, seemingly big, seemingly small, but it's one activity. Does that make sense? When it is more accurate to speak that way?
Yeah.
In that
So
way,
tell me.
sorry, continue.
No, just in that way, with that way of thinking, where do you put the word beliefs?
I think there's no such thing as a belief or as a thought or as a sense. You can always go to the end where it's all just one thing, or maybe saying it's one thing is one too many things when you refer to experience. But what I'm talking about is differentiating things for the benefit of seeker, for ease of guiding, which is, to me at least, it seems like a belief, if you want to cut it like that, is when a thought has the potential to create sensation, when it has the power to cause sensation. And to me, when a thought has power to cause a sensation, that's what I mean when I say there's a belief in this thing, in this thought.
Okay. So there is a thought appearing, and it causes something, and this kind of causality is somehow the belief.
Yeah, because for example, if you have the thought that there's a lion in the room, you don't feel anything. It's just empty words because there's no belief there. There's no feeling, flavor that's true, and so it doesn't do anything doesn't create any kind of sensation.
But if you have the
Okay,
thought that
so
if you have the thought
go
that
ahead, please.
I am unworthy or I am not enough, that's all consuming. That is a whole universe. That isn't just internally, that's almost external as well. That's the gravity that Ramiz was referring to. That has a heaviness about it. That and the whole and everything we move through is experienced as part of that. The whole world outside of us is part of that
Okay,
feeling.
well,
That's belief.
well, I will still frame it differently because when I hear when the thought has the power to do to do something, I think it's misleading because we put power, we put causality into an activity that have no power and no causality whatsoever from a perspective. There is maybe something that is projecting meaning, like it is okay, but I think if you talk about this, there is a thought happening, like I am unworthy, and there is a sensation responding to it. We can speak about this without using beliefs. We can say, okay, there is thought appearing, a story, a narration. I am unworthy. Okay, and the sensation, and there is a reaction in your sensation about that story. I say the same as you say, but I didn't imply causality, and I think it's more accurate and maybe more helpful because the proof that thought is not causal, it's like you say, if I think about a unicorn, nothing is happening in my body. If I'm thinking about dentist, I have all memory coming, I have a tsunami coming to, and I have sensation, start to search for sensation. But it's not the thought itself. And maybe this is where you will say, yeah, it is a belief in the thought. And I think this belief in the thought is what you are pointing to is it is the way the sensation are reacting to this thought. But to say that it is causal, I think it's, to me, it seems important, but maybe it's not that important. I don't know.
My mind coming up with this analogy of a mirror from one side and a glass, transparent glass from one side. And it's like from the perspective of the thought, it can reflect on the sensation and create a story or whatever. But from the other side, there's not even a thought. It's so transparent.
Yeah, because it's this. I was trying to express this in other meetings. It's the thought in itself has no meaning. So there is a projection of meaning somehow. But at the same time, I don't find nothing that projects. So it's kind of strange. Yeah. I don't know if it's only semantic, because I feel we are talking about something very similar. So I don't know if it's very useful or if it makes sense.
I have the feeling that it's semantics and we're more or less saying the same thing.
Yeah, I'm doing with that feeling also. Yeah.
But not the guy is the question.
So is it
Sorry?
deconstruction? Is it deconstruction of this that we need to take the person who feels that they're not enough to a person that doesn't feel that? Is it just deconstruction of this that we need, or is it something more?
Well, Vince, you want the person to change?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is not my intention.
So what would your intention be?
I will be pointing to what is actually happening.
For what purpose? They
Because I
want to
find it
change.
very interesting. I think it's very interesting.
Mm. I mean,
I'm not,
I agree with you. That's the way to bring about change, though. They want to change. You want to help them change. And by focusing on what is actually there is how that change might happen. I agree with that.
yeah, because
So certainly to have them change is not the primary focus. That's an end result or a side effect even.
well, it's very interesting because you used this example of I am unworthy, and the source of I am unworthy is there is something wrong with me. I have to
Yes.
change.
Yeah.
So in this example, for example, the first step, if I approach this energy with yes, we will do something, mm, maybe I think it's always more it's helpful to not wanting to change the person or what is happening, even though by looking, by seeing, by being clear with what is happening, the person, which is an energy pattern, reorganize itself more naturally and
Yeah.
spontaneously.
I agree. Yeah.
And it is exactly this spontaneity that will bring change. Because if the change comes from the person, the person, the belief, belief again, you see, the person will bring its pathology into the next
Yes.
story, into the next story, into the next story. It will just shift and move. It's thought. It's the same as if you have attention. For example, I have attention here, right? And I start to force to move. Okay, I'll just move. This tension will move, but it will just move around in another part of the body.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
With beliefs, it's the same. You can change the beliefs of I am unworthy, but whatever was there will just move around, and then you will be addicted to something, and you just move around, and you will. So
Yeah.
to be
So it's
connected with this
yeah.
spontaneity is the change, but from the perspective of the person, I am not empathic. I don't care about anything. But of course, I want people to be happy, but I cannot approach energy that way from my perspective.
Mm. No, I agree with you. That's it. That's absolutely appropriate not to chase an end result, but to focus on what is current, what is there now. Yes. And it occurred to me as you were talking that we want to move from I am unworthy to that whole story being irrelevant rather than to some other story like I am worthy. We want to get them to the point where they recognize that whole story is a joke.
Yeah. But to recognize that thoughts have no value in themselves, that thought have no meaning.
Mm.
Thought that just it's an activity that is present or not, but they don't mean anything. They don't point to anything. And when you see this, you are free as, I don't know, 95% of your misery is gone. And
Mm.
after the five others, well, you
And is your preferred method to get people to see this, having them become much more sensitive to, sensations and thoughts and
yeah,
whatnot?
yeah. The first is differentiation, which is another word to grow in sensitivity, to be more able to really differentiate between a mental image and a thought. It's two different texture, and to grow in sensitivity, I think it's really key. And after the main reason why we are so addicted to thinking is because thinking is protecting us from sensations, uncomfortable sensation. So if you are able to go in to stay with sensation, the huge part of your addiction in thinking, and therefore your addiction in different for different objects will just fall almost completely. And after there, you can start to do very deep exploration about beliefs and this and that. But yeah, for me, it's the main orientation.
Can you run me through it, David? Say, for example, it's on the similar vein. I've got a belief where I am a disappointment to my dad. How would you start that?
Well, when you say I am a disappointment to my dad, when this thought is present, how do your body react to that?
Sadness.
Where in the body is located the sadness?
It's like from my throat and then down.
Is the thought. Can you stay with it a little bit? Stay with the sadness? Because this is not about changing anything. It's not about getting rid of the sadness. It's just recognize, oh, I am a disappointment to my father, and I feel sad about that. So feel it in a tactile way. Feel this sadness. Does it is a pulsation, a vibration? Does it go up or down? It is more present in the front of the back of the body. It is in the lung, in the throat, more in this muscle, the neck. Just feel it, sense it. What's happening?
Yeah, that you know the feeling when you're about to cry. That feeling. That feeling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it? Can you stay with this? Do you are comfortable with staying with in this feeling?
Yeah,
Or
that's
it's-
fine.
Yeah. Try to close your eyes. So there's this sensation of sadness that is there. That is now it is about to cry. You still think that it's about to cry. What other sensation there is? Are
In
there
the
other
chest,
sensation?
there's that sunken feeling.
In the chest. Can you feel your arm and your legs also?
No difference there.
No difference. Okay, but they are present. You can feel them, right?
Yeah, it's a bit just chilly.
Chilly. And chilly, it means it's comfortable, I guess.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
uncomfortable. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So just try to feel the whole dimension of sensation. I will say something, and you tell me how your sensation react, right? How your body reacts. Okay. Generally, you are a disappointment to your father. Just feel it. Don't think about it. Just feel it. Just feel that.
Yeah, it intensified and then mellowed out again.
Okay. Is there any thought present?
What does that mean? What does felt presence mean?
No, is there any thinking present?
Ah, thoughts. Yeah, there's those. As soon as you said it, there was like stories approaching. I felt small. I felt lonely. And then the image of my dad being sad came up.
Small and lonely. When you say small and lonely, does it is connected to a felt sense, to a sensation specifically?
Say that again.
You say there is the feeling of smallness and loneliness. Can you find them in your body, in your sensations?
Oh no,
You feel
because
small right now.
no, that's why I didn't bring it up, because I know it's a story, but it was more the image of like shrinking into fetal position kind of thing.
Can, can you, so the shrinking, can you feel it somatically? It's shrinking.
Not really, no.
So what can you feel somatically?
It's just a movement of sensation in the chest.
What else? What else? So there is a movement and sensation in the chest. And what else is present?
I don't know, now there's just a stillness.
What?
Stillness? Stillness?
A stillness.
Yeah. A lightness? I don't know, maybe because we have sat through the emotion.
Can you feel this lightness, this stillness? Where it is located? Just stay with it, feel it. Just like you did with sensation, feel it is this stillness. Where it is it big, is it small? Is it vibrating? Does it have a shape or a form? Does it have a movement up and down, front and side? Does it is getting bigger or smaller?
No, it's quite stationary and it's around the head.
Around the head and stationary.
Maybe just because there's no thoughts.
You don't have to give reason to stillness or to any sensation. Just notice. Okay, now
Okay.
there's this stillness, and it's located around the head, and it's kind of not moving. Can you feel the rest of your body?
Mm-hmm.
Is there something happening there?
No, the things I was describing before is gone.
So what else is there?
Just tension in my stomach.
Tension in the stomach.
Maybe it's just more of a physical one.
Everything is physical, so don't discard it, you know. If you eat a bad burrito, well, feel the pain of the bad burrito. You know, it's not about feeling bad sensation to get rid of it. It's just being with what is present. Is what is right here. We can do another exploration after we can back to something else, but can you look in the room and find an object that you see that make you some kind of reaction, or there is some story with this object? When you see it, there is a story popping out.
My drugs.
With drugs. Okay, so look at the object. Look at the object. Look at the shape of the object, the light, the shades. Really look at it. Look at the object. Look at the visual experience of the object. Different color, the spectrum of light, the size. And does the story that when you look before and there was a story, does this story come from the object? The object is telling you this is that, and the narration and past. Does this information is contained within the visual experience of the object?
No.
No. So do you agree that the object is neutral
Mm-hmm.
in itself?
Yeah.
But even if it is neutral, it's still an experience, right? You still experience shade in graduation, it's right, it's still there. Do you have to do anything about this object? Do you have to interact with it in any way right now? No. But this is the way to approach sensation also.
Okay, so if I've explored that feeling that comes with that story of I'm a disappointment to my dad, what next?
Well, you have two paths. You are right. The path of exploring the belief, like Tyler was saying, is it true? Your father, the meaning, the value you give in its judgment, and all of this story. This is one exploration. It's completely valid, and if you feel that you have to do it, then do it. It's important. If you feel that you have to do it, it's because it's important to you. It's great. That means that you have to do it. The other part is being with sensation, being with the object as they are, And when we do this exploration, understand that now you say, yeah, so now what? What is the resolution? When you see, when you think like that, you are already in thought. You are in the stream of thinking. That is, the stream of thinking is always goal oriented. It always do something for something, to obtain, to get rid of. When you are oriented toward a goal, you are back into the thinking, which is fine. I'm just pointing out. The invitation is that I'm guiding you. I guided you is to develop the ability and the pleasure to be with experience as it is in the moment, without goal, without purpose. Because there is a richness in seeing an object. To be in the visual field, there is a pleasure and a richness into it that doesn't involve thinking. But of course, if we do it here in 5 minutes, maybe it doesn't make sense. But with time, you can really develop some kind of taste and joy and just seeing whatever object it is. It doesn't have to be a tree. It can be a car. It can be anything, because the experience of color can be really, really deep, or the sound. And that's why people love so much music, because music, it's more easy to be with music without thinking, and it's amazing. But it's possible to live this amazingness with all the perceptions and with the sensations. Does it make sense? I don't know if you feel disappointed that we didn't reach some goal, some end, some resolution, some clear technique, but this is one proposition that I have.
No, thank you. So what I understood was explore the sensation and explore it in a way where you see it as neutral in a sense. And then you kind of stumble upon the realization that the sensation doesn't hold that story of I am a disappointment.
Exactly. What you point is very interesting. It is neutral in story and drama and meaning, but it's absolutely not neutral in intensity and richness and fullness and open-ended discovery.
Right.
But it is neutral in the sense that thought it's within what thought think it's yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't finish this sentence, but it was too much talk there. I had too much. And you can start with things very small, It can be a pen, I received this pen when whatever, I received a diploma, and just watch it. Is the diploma there? Is the joy in the pen? It is, what is this?
Right.
In Elio, we go a lot through what there is no self, what it is the self, who is the self. But to ask, who am I, it's very similar to what is this, because there's no difference. But it's easier with objects because you have less attachment with it, and it's easier to see with objects. With perceptual field is easier, and after you go into sensation, it's harder. And yeah.
Yeah, I think I've tried Tyler's way of trying to go into the belief and deconstruct it. I feel like that's probably harder than your way.
So I would offer a third way, and that is not to say any of the other ways are inappropriate or aren't going to do the job. But I would say if we're dealing with identification, that is the connection between, or the ownership of that feeling, right? That is you, John Lee, has this feeling that he disappoints his father. I would look at it from the perspective that that is not just a remnant of identification, that is in fact something pretty fundamental, and a whole lot of other stuff sits on top of that, because those kind of things come from, and these are my stories, those kind of things come from a long time ago. They come from way back, and it's somewhere where young Johnny Lee was the one who felt he disappointed his father, and that he's carrying that in him at a cellular level. And so I would be looking to investigate that as a way of changing that thing. But I would still be looking at in the now, even though attached to that is a story about when it happened, way back when. But it did. It didn't just happen in the last 12 months. This has been around for a long, long time. This has been around for as long as you can remember, most likely. So it's something you've carried with you. It's embedded in you, and that's the way I would see it. So it's a third option. It's a third different way of going at these kind of things, but the same process. You would be looking at sensations, and you would be seeing the stories attached to those sensations. And when those stories drop off as being seen through, then that sensation will dissolve, but it will reveal something underneath that, and so on. So we will go down a hierarchical thing down to shame and even guilt about not being good enough to please your father. And it was all based on an innocent young child not having the perspective to put it into it, not having the interpretation to put it into an appropriate perspective. Right? So that the young child who first started to feel that way, like they were a disappointment to their father, couldn't see the whole picture, couldn't see it as a big picture, couldn't see that the father's demands were him expressing his own shit, and that the interpretation of the young child was something that was adopted and carried through and is still there now. So that's much more of a psychological way of looking at it than the direct way. But yeah, that's where things go for me these days. That's changed a little bit from that other stuff to this stuff. And I like the drama of that too. That's a much bigger story. Yeah.
We just have created a Tyler way now. There is a Tyler way.
Yeah. Did you say tidal wave?
No, Tyler.
Yeah, I know.
Tyler.
I'm joking.
Ah,
I'm just
sorry, I
joking.
didn't understand
Yeah.
like it was a joke. Sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
get it.
John, I do want you to do what David is saying and come back as like a guinea pig so that you can report back all the observations you make. I think that would be very interesting. And it does make me think, because this thing that you're pointing to, David, is kind of the end point of what I point to, where people get to a point where they're only left with what's here, and so they just, yeah. So it's interesting that you just go straight to that.
Yeah. Well, that's my end point too. But yeah, it's a different route to it. That's all.
But I don't presume that a lot of people will enjoy this way. But
I don't think
but
they enjoy
because this
any of
is
that way. Yeah, nobody wants to change their beliefs, do they?
because but I cannot. I just always feel that I like to express where I am and what I do in the moment, even if I am aware that it maybe not be the best for someone. But I like to start there, and if it doesn't work, I just shift gear if it's needed. But why not start at the end? Why not see, why not point clearly to where we go? And if you cannot understand how to get there, well, then you can take a map and see if it's needed. But yeah, I hope it helped. For me, it's very helpful.
Mm.
But
So,
let's see how
so
John Lee experiment, and let's see how
yeah.
it
So
goes.
just
I'm curious too.
to be clear about it for John Lee or for me, um, he already recognizes the story component of this as story, but there's some how can I put it? The so what part of it doesn't quite register. And what you're aiming for him to do is to get hold of that, to see, to go quite directly to the emptiness of stories
Well,
by yeah
tell me.
by seeing the fullness of direct experience, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but exactly, because it's two paths. First, when the so what arise, this is thought already, right? Because at some point the mind will never be satisfied. That's why there is Netflix. That's why there is an infinity of distraction that it seems that never end. It's just a miracle. I mean, distraction just never end. There's always something new.
Mm,
Okay, that's fine, but that's the mind. The mind will never be satisfied ever. So let's just assume that will never happen and just accept that feeling, because so what is often connected to what is here is not enough. This is when you say so what, you're saying this is boring. So what? I don't. Okay, this is a pen. So well, who cares? I want to draw something. I want to write a story. Yeah. Okay. This is because there is not enough attention to what's happening here. And at the beginning, it seems like this is nothing. It doesn't have value. It's not amazing. It's nice. Yeah. But gradually, if you tune to it and you tune to it, you will start my guess, that's what happened to me. There is a seduction into direct experience. You get seduced into it, and you don't explore or feel with a purpose, just because there is a deep pleasure to just be with it as it is. And this movement will naturally decrease thinking drastically, because there is less attraction to go into thinking.
yes.
But it's true that it takes time, probably, and it's not very usual.
Yeah, we're changing habits. That's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, but the best way to change habits is to do something that is more pleasurable. So at first, a pen is not pleasurable, but if you can see the light shining, and you can really focus on what the actual experience of seeing, of sight, it's really mind-blowing. It's really like, oh my God, what is light, It's and you can get seduced to other dimensions.
Yeah.
And then in comparison, the activity of thinking, it's very low. It's not very attractive at some point. It's less and less attractive.
Yeah, it becomes more hollow. Yeah.
I think that the reason why I had never thought to point straight to this is because of my own experience, where I had tried all this kind of mindfulness, concentration, meditation, do nothing stuff. And it never worked for me. And it was only after insight through inquiry that staying with sensations and perception became much easier and much more pleasurable. So that's probably creating my bias. And for John, because you've gone down so much inquiry before, it's probably worth giving this a shot.
No, I stay with sensation. That's been my path. That's why it's so alluring. But it was in the form of say I felt a sensation of fear, and then I'd just go completely through it, and then now what? It's kind of like the fear, like the sensation doesn't scare me anymore. Yeah, but that was the path, or what's underneath it all. What David's pointing to is a bit different.
So now what? Now.
Yeah, now what? I don't know.
Now. You asked what? It's now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not now what, just now. Now what is future oriented.
Right.
What's next? That's another way of saying now what. Well, we're not worried about what's next. We're worried about what's here. Not worried about it, but we're interested in what's here.
Yeah, I understand.
You know, Taylor, what you bring, it's interesting because my own path wasn't doing that. I did I did a lot of training around birth therapy, and I'm still I'm still assistant in some workshop about birth and how to process birth and wound imprints and all of this theme. So I recognize a great value in many different ways to approach, really, so it's amazing. But the question now is, do I recommend what is working right now, or do I recommend what has worked in the past? This is kind of a question I'm asking myself right now, you know. And after, what is the purpose? Do I want to make money and have a lot of people, clients, so I kind of make more concession maybe? Or do I want to just be straight with what I'm living, and I don't mind whatever who kind of won't want to follow or not, you know, this kind of line of inquiry. It's a question I ask. I have no answer, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah, so many things go into this. And it is, like you said, of course, it's different for everyone. And as you try things and you don't feel that that's working, then you shift around and stuff.
That's why map are useful, but they are dangerous because the tendency is to put everyone under the same train, and then you want to reason, but it's so specific, it's so unique, and there are people who have never read any book. And suddenly they just say things that maybe I have no idea what they're talking about, you know, because I don't know. So we map are useful, but they are very limited also in a way. And I have someone now that I'm guiding, and it's asking me, how was my awakening, you know? And first, I don't really relate to this word awakening, so but okay, let's say okay, I'm awake. Okay, it's horrible to hear that, but okay, let's suppose that. I'm not sure that my story will be helpful to him whatsoever. I think it will create more problem than something else. Because if I awaken and I tell him I saw a pink elephant for a year, or maybe I'm still seeing pink elephant, he will start to search pink elephant. He will go to the zoo, trying to see if there is one. But it is helpful. I don't know. I'm not convinced. I don't know. I don't know if you guys you shared the story, and I don't know if the people that are not awake is helpful to them. I don't know. I'm not convinced about that.
Sometimes I get excited when somebody starts talking like they're very close to the portal that I fell through when that happened, and then sometimes it might seem like it's relevant to them, but most of the time it's not, you know. But as I say, this thing, whatever we want to call it, this shift, that it happens because of a huge number of variables happen to be present and aligned at the right moment. And everybody is so unique that we can't actually predict what it's going to be like. So we just play around and try this and try that and try everything, and then eventually we give up, and then it happens, or something, you know. It's like nobody can say what it takes. For every person, it's different. Everybody is absolutely unique. It's amazing how different conditions are required for some, but there are some commonalities. There are some, so you know that makes us feel like we're all kind of doing the same thing in a way. But yeah, there's no predictability about this at all. Otherwise, we would have a formula, and that's what we would use, and that would always work. But of course, it doesn't. You know, any formula works for some people and not others. Yeah. It's an experiment. It's always a big experiment. I always take it when somebody's camera comes on that that they have something to say. Is that the case, Louise?
Not really. I'm quite tired. I'm just getting the kids ready for school, but I've got 5 minutes and a coffee, so I just thought I'd share my face. I'm just really enjoying the discussion, to be honest. Really getting a few insights. Yeah, probably go and re-listen to it, but
It feels
no,
really
nothing.
good here. I love that you say those things. That, yeah.
No, nothing. Just kind of waking up and looking and seeing and sensing what's going on, and yeah. Okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's good to see everyone. Thank you.
Good to see you.
You know, as a guide, and I say as a guide, but it's for people who still guiding client anyway. I think it's because there is no rule, we are really free to express ourselves and to point in the way that feel right for us in the moment. And the other will take what is needed for his process. And I will deeply trust that, and to trust that, you know, that that we are all responsible of our own process, and there is no one outside of you who can really mess it up. If you believe that, it's because you have the habit to give power away, or to give meaning outside to people. But to me, it's not, it doesn't work that way. And to give autonomy, I think it's really essential. Not to give autonomy, but to realize that you know, that everyone is responsible of his own process, and everything that's happening is the process. You know, I'm gonna see it and I'm gonna meditate. Okay, that's cool, you know, but your whole life it's a process, so you cannot miss it, you know. Everything is under control.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that where the focus for me is these days seems like it's quite different to where it was before. And when I say before, I'm not going back that far, maybe 12 months or something. So things have evolved and changed for me. And you know what? I don't remember how I used to guide back then, but I only know how I do it now and where the focus is. And yet this mouth moves and words come out, and it's almost like I'm reading from a book sometimes. You know, they just exactly the same words that have come out before. And you know, it's really crazy and interesting to watch it happens. And it's like I don't know why or how it's transformed into what it is, but it does feel different. And yet I don't remember what it was like at all. Yeah. And yet if I go back and look at some of my guidings from 10 or 12 years ago, a lot of the same words come out of my mouth now. And yet it feels really different. Yeah. It's
It's
crazy.
happened exactly the same. I found the text that I wrote like 15 years ago, and I'm like, this is so right, this is so amazing. But I also realized that at the moment I wrote, I didn't understand them that way.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So yeah.
Um, I don't really know what I'm going to say, but I feel the urge to speak somehow. Um, yeah, I don't really know where to start, but yeah, last week Irene was speaking, and there was something resonating in me, and she was talking about the innocent child and some sweetness that there was to it. And I don't know if I want to label it like this, but recently I'm having this feeling quite often that yeah, sweetness is quite a good word for it somehow. And sometimes I burst into tears out of, yeah, this sweetness. And it doesn't have to do anything with this character, but it's really like curiosity. Um, yeah, I don't know. Um, and this feeling somehow, yeah, it feels like it is expanding a bit into everyday life also. But then, for example, I reduced my working hours, and the Mondays and Tuesdays is like 8 hours of teaching, and after that, I usually feel really dizzy with a headache. Like I feel nearly like vomiting. I don't know. It's like awful. And then yeah, I am able to get rid of like to remove the labels, and it's okay. But since it is like a repetition, like every week, there certainly is like some kind of, I don't want to say inner voice or something, but something connected to this childlike sweetness that somehow, yeah, it is like, why the fuck are you doing that to yourself, you know? Like, and I know that it's not anything about taking a decision or something. And in the last weeks, it was quite interesting because there were several moments when I really thought like, no, I'm not going to do that, or I am going to do that. And then it was, yeah, and I didn't, or I did, you know? So in the end, like in the last moment, I did it, although I thought I would not do it, or other way around. So, mm, yeah, but then I guess there's also, yeah, I was caught up a bit in stories last week, or I mean, I could still see it, but I could see it was a story, but there was some reactivity to it by intentionally not reacting to it, you know? It's not the same as not having any reactivity, I guess. And yeah, it was because I found out that the secretary doesn't like me, and she wanted, yeah, she was working against me, and she told my boss she should not extend my contract or something like that. And it came to me as a surprise because actually recently, like at work, I was feeling quite fine, or like having a nice contact with everybody. And then I knew, okay, well, that was like a secondhand information from a colleague. Um, who knows what is really behind this story? I don't really have an idea about that. Then also, maybe in my imagination now, it's much worse than it was actually. And these things are supposed to happen maybe in companies. I don't know that yeah, someone has an issue with, yeah, maybe I can have some power and use it, or I don't know. Actually, I don't really care too much about it. But on the other hand, mm, I'm aware that this is a story, but yeah, this I don't know, childlike experience also has to do with I mean, in my biography, I would say like at some point I built up like a wall to protect myself with a lot of arrogance, with like really collecting all the data that I could use against this person in the worst case, for example. And that has fallen away actually with this, I call it like childlike experience. And I really love that fact. I'm really happy about that. But then it was kind of a hook into, oops, okay, I thought it was like a nice place to work, but then there are some toxic things happening in the background, you know?
Mm.
And I think that was like a little driplet that made like this feeling of being exhausted a bit more to go in this direction, like what the fuck are you doing? Why do you exhaust yourself for working in an environment which is like partially toxic? So there are these kind of things
Yep,
going
yep.
on. I don't really find so nice. I mean,
So
like she
don't you find it interesting that there's this part of you that says, "Why are you doing this?"
hmm,
And then this secretary is going to say, "Well, I can fix this for you. We won't extend your contract." And then
hmm,
you turn around and go the other direction and say, "Oh no, that's not right."
hmm, yeah,
There's
that's real.
a bit of a paradox there, isn't there? You know, you want what she's offering you what you want at
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
at one level. Yeah.
Somehow, yeah, I have to be honest. Sometimes, I mean, a bit, it's also very childish, but the reactivity I'm having at the moment is like just I'm not I'm really less pretending to um want to perform, you know?
Yes.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, it's really a bit like I go to work and I think like I don't give a shit. I'm not going to play this teacher role.
Mm.
Uh, but then anyway, it happens. I mean, I can't really decide to not play this
Yeah.
role
Yeah.
or this role. It's just like, of course, I'm not. Of course, it's not the Leonard of my private life at
Yes.
work. I
Yes.
mean, it's
Yeah.
always kind of related to a role. Otherwise, it would not
Yeah, so
function.
you play the role, but there's not a strong identification in it.
No,
It's just what
no,
you do because that's what you do. Yeah.
yeah, but to be honest, sometimes I think like, for example, mm, this secretary used to be like really unfriendly with me, like a bit respectless as well in the beginning. And it was always about like super idiotic things. I mean, it was like, for example, um, the rule is to fill out this formula with a pencil and not with a ball pen, you know? And then I didn't really care about, or I forgot about it, and I filled it out for the third time with a ball pen, and she was getting
You're a
mad,
horrible person.
you know? And then I was like, really, is that really what we are making like a big fuss out of it now? You know, I couldn't really take this seriously.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
yes. All the more reason for her to dislike you.
yeah. And yeah, now that I'm talking about it, it's like really absurd in a way. And now I noticed that I sometimes do it on purpose.
Oh, you horrible person. Yeah.
And yeah, and I mean, that's not a reason to fire me, maybe, but sometimes I think like, yeah, actually, I would not be too sad to be fired.
Mm, yeah, yeah. Well, life hands us stuff, doesn't it? Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, the other thing is that I noticed, I mean, I really like my flat and everything. I like the city where I'm living. There's no identification with it. I don't know.
Mm.
And the places I've lived before, well, I know them, but it's not like that I feel really attached to them. I don't know. It's weird because I used to have this identification before in my life, and now it's just like, okay, it could be any other place as well.
Mm.
Maybe
Mm.
not any other place, but for example, when I studied, I spent a year in Moscow, and I would certainly not want to live there, maybe.
Mm.
But
Mm. So, do you think there is any identification with a non-identifying person?
hmm, no, because there are a lot of other things that I still identify with. I mean, it's just not about the place so much.
Mm. So, if all of those things were to go or to fall, if there was to be no identification with anything,
Hmm.
would that be okay?
Mm, I guess so, yes. Because, for example, if now it happens to me sometimes that I think I could do any job, you know, because anyway, I won't identify with it. It's just work.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just for earning money, nothing
Yeah.
more.
It's no
So,
different to breathing or eating or anything else, eh?
yeah, but that's pretty new for me because, I mean, if like some years ago anybody had told me I have to do a telephone job or something, then it would have been like, oh no, that would be an awful life or something like that. But I
Yeah.
don't have I don't imagine it to be like that. I mean, I don't draw any conclusions from what is your job to what is, yeah, something related to a self-image
Yeah,
or
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. So,
shitty life.
so that
I don't
old
know.
that old Buddhist saying about chopping wood and carrying water,
Hmm.
that suggests the mundane things in life,
Hmm.
and yet filling a bucket with water or chopping a piece of wood, every single piece of wood is different. Every single piece of wood is magical. Every
Hmm.
every stroke of the axe is magical. Every droplet of water is, so there is there is I have a really strong a fellow I work with here also. He works at the local supermarket at Coles of an evening stacking shelves, and
Hmm.
and he he's an intelligent man. He gets a
Hmm.
great joy out of doing that
Hmm.
job. That's just,
Yeah.
you know, chopping wood and carrying water. It's just that can be incredibly fulfilling with the
Yeah.
right attitude. Yeah.
Yeah. For example, when I came back from Argentina to Germany, at first I didn't have a job. And of course, I didn't have a flat. So I stayed at my mom's house for like 3 or 4 months. And for example, in Argentina, that would be super normal. But in Germany, it isn't. I mean, people look at you as if you were like a bit strange when you say, I'm 42 and I'm living with my mom. Because they say like, ah, okay, that's like hotel mama, hotel mom or something like that. So, and I also noticed like in Germany, it's pretty often that when you go to a party, the first thing is like, um, ah, what are you working,
Yeah.
for
What do you
example?
do? Yeah. Yeah.
Not
That's
like
not
that
just in Germany. That's a lot of places.
in
Yeah.
South America, they don't ask you that. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know.
Yeah.
That's interesting for them. So I went to a party and somebody asked me, and then I heard myself saying like, yeah, I'm 42 and I don't have I'm unemployed and I'm living with my mom. And then it was quite interesting to feel into it because that's so, I mean, in Germany, that would be really like a loser or something.
Mm.
But maybe back then it would still like, I would still feel like a bit, oh, okay, what will this? Now
Yeah.
I wouldn't care anymore, actually. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
also after having had this experience in a different culture where it's like totally normal that when many people lose their jobs and have to move back to their parents because they can't afford an apartment, for
Sure. Yeah.
example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
That's more and more everywhere. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
here it's not, but I could see that's like only a cultural thing. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I feel mischievous. I would say, oh, I'm an unemployed drug addict and I live on the street. Yeah.
yeah. Mm.
I just love to provoke people. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like what I hear. You know, your questioning, your discovery mind, your curiosity is great. I love it. I love it.
It's
Yeah,
just like, I mean, I mean, think she wanted to throw me out. And the thing is that, yeah, mm, at least in this branch of teaching German, I guess it's the only institute I could work with because it's not such a big city.
mm,
So it's kind of also, okay, if they throw me out there, it's, yeah, I could find a different job maybe. But yeah, but I mean, then if I imagine what would happen, then maybe, okay, I don't have this job anymore. I can't afford this apartment anymore. I have to move back to my mom's. So what?
Yeah. So what? Yeah. And the other thing is that that with your attitude, I feel, and it's just amazing with such a wide perspective on what's going on around you.
Mm,
Life offers you things. Things turn up in an amazing way. Their magic is real. It does happen.
mm.
Yeah. And so it's always an interesting experiment to just go. I wonder what's going to happen now. Just wide-eyed curiosity is so great.
But,
Yeah.
it's also that I mean, I can see my colleagues, for example, who are like highly identified with their job, especially this secretary, for
Mm.
example,
And how
because
much stress do
one
they
thing
have
is,
in their body all the time? Stressed out.
but yeah, actually, uh, she doesn't have a lot of power as a secretary, but that's kind of maybe, I don't know, that's all like assumptions,
Mm.
but yeah, like this looking down on other people and trying to be more friends with the boss, and that it seems to me really like ridiculous puppet theater, like, and then the
Oh,
crocodile comes.
yeah. No, for me,
It's
for me,
like,
that provokes compassion. This is a person with a low self-esteem, trying to feel
yeah,
good. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you got to feel a
There's,
little bit sad for them rather than angry at them.
yeah, I think yeah, this is an assumption as well, but she's from Ukraine, and I mean, yeah, I think this it's a cliche, but in Germany, it's like the most important thing is to work, you know? So, for a lot of people, maybe not only in Germany, I don't know, but there are some people who come to Germany from a different country and then they grasp, okay, it's like very important to work a lot. And then there's this kind of um, over adaptation, like
Mm.
being more German than the Germans or something. Okay, that's a story anyway. But
Yeah. That's a tricky one. Yeah. We do tend to generalize. We are all racists when it comes to our ideas
uh,
about how people are in different countries. Yeah.
uh,
Mm.
yeah, it's interesting how labels like have this purpose of not having to look into it,
Mm. Mm.
like
Mm.
which is, yeah, sometimes I think maybe, for example, someone who is schizophrenic who doesn't have those filters and doesn't use lake. I don't know if it's like this, but
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
also maybe labels have some purpose for having orientation or not having too much information, or I don't know.
So how do you notice a difference in people who come from East Germany rather than West Germany? Is there a do you see a trend in the way they are?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So how do
Yeah.
we look at that without being racist, without generalizing and saying everybody from there is that this way and all the others are different? It's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, not everybody is like that. I mean, like the cliche you could have. I mean,
Yes, yeah, it is cliche, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Mm. Mm. You always look so serious, Bianca, and it's great to see even a little smile like that. You feeling serious?
Mm. No, I was thinking about this shame about some jobs, professions, and how it depends on well, I can see in spiritual circles that people are ashamed that they work in IT or accountants. You know, they are seriously ashamed of doing a corporate job.
Right. Do you think they see a corporate job as selling out on some principle? I don't know. Yeah.
But there is something like creative professions, you know, artistic, have much more status in spiritual circles.
Ah, yeah. And yet
You know,
somehow,
like you talk with Phoebe about her paintings, the drawings, and
yeah.
this is so awesome. But being an accountant, it is not so awesome.
Well, the skill of an accountant isn't so obvious, is it? Unless you're directly involved with them, perhaps. Yeah. Yeah, it is a nuance. And yet there is that, at least here in Australia. Well, I say here in Australia, I don't even know if that's true, but for something I've come across is that a lot of artists are seen as uh, a bit like chefs. The chefs are often seen as a bit arrogant, maybe. Well, maybe arrogant's not quite the right word, but certainly a bit maybe narcissistic or something like that. There's this kind of there is a negative feeling with something about, like artists in general, unless they stand out as exceptionally talented, and then we can forgive them for their weirdness. It's a funny one, isn't it? Yeah. Whereas accountants, of course, are very serious people. You know, they have facts to deal with. No creativity, just facts. Yeah. But you're an accountant, eh?
Me? No.
I notice you've done quite a bit of tidying up there behind you.
No, a bit.
So what do you do for a job? I get the feeling that you do something quite serious. Are you in IT?
I'm an editor.
An editor. Okay, that's kind of halfway between
Checking.
IT and artist, isn't it?
I do spell checking.
Okay.
and that is why I have to spell check my posts every time.
Right. Yeah. Oh dear. I just use Grammarly. I just have an automatic spell checker working for me. I don't bother to do it myself.
We
My
don't have such a good tool for Polish.
Okay. Oh, surprising. Yeah. Oh, it's great. It just underlines all the mistakes with red, and it even suggests better grammar for me as well. Yeah. Not that I listen
Good
to it.
thing we don't have it, because I would be
Out of a
not
job.
needed.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, you'll get replaced by artificial intelligence soon enough.
I think that awaits everyone.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe only this spiritual business is the only one that is worth pursuing now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think artificial intelligence will even get into this area as well soon enough. Yeah. And it probably will be very good at it too. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe we'll all just have to be human in the end and won't have any jobs. Yeah. Mm.
Before I was also thinking about belief. What's a belief?
So what did you do with belief? I missed the first part of what you said.
Oh, just thinking what makes a thought a belief?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Can you articulate what came up for you?
Well, it can be different. Some things. There is a thought. I know it's a belief, and it's like my mind goes through the through memories and facts. It's like like pages turning, and it comes out like check, compute, or doesn't compute.
Hmm. That's, that's probably a good way to define a belief. It's something that computes. Yeah. But when we try and break down what is it when it computes, what happens? There is feelings, there are thoughts, there are synchronicities in those things.
Yes, but what is this feeling of it does compute or it doesn't compute?
Well, it doesn't compute is easy,
It's,
isn't it? That's discord. But compute is another matter. That's quite complex.
well, it is like this piece of a puzzle that clicks.
Mm. Yep, falls into place. Yeah. And if we
But
say
it's not, not in one of the five senses.
well, it kind of brings up something about a sense.
Maybe reaction to it.
Yes, yes.
There is some kind of reaction physical in the body.
Yeah.
It clicks and it feels good.
Yep. And maybe it can't be isolated to any one sense. Maybe it's actually a combination of senses that fall into place. We tend to think it's a sensory, a tactile thing, but is it tactile when we have a feeling? When there is a sensation, is it just a tactile thing? Because they can be more than just tactile, can't they? Maybe the audible is not so obvious, or the visual is not so obvious, or the smell or taste is not so obvious. But there is a saying, there is there is an organ language saying about something tasting right or smelling right. You know, that's if we say something doesn't compute, we can often say that has a certain smell about it. It's just a matter of language. I don't know about in your culture, but certainly here we can say, yes, that has a certain smell. It smells a bit off, would be one way of saying it doesn't seem right.
Yes, oh, it has a foul smell.
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, organ language is amazing stuff. It really just, I never cease to be amazed by what comes up with it. Yeah. Boy, John Lee, you look really different without your headphones on, like a different person. No, leave them off, leave them off. Don't want you to put them on. Yeah. I didn't realize you had a rooster haircut until now. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that again, that just fascinates me. You know, what you excite me there to think about that that can we it can't be isolated. I think the feelings involved with a belief, it's just way too complex. Maybe.
Yeah, and David asked earlier what's a belief, and I think I said it's a it's a statement that has a flavor of being true, as if
Yes.
that's a flavor, but it's just because I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, flavor is a great word too, isn't it? It's not specific, but we know what you mean. Yeah, yeah. And there's a kind of a warmth in it. Yeah, there's a welcoming feeling which can't be put down to any one of the senses, but it is there.
Yeah, but there are also because I was speaking with Tyler about this, how I see five senses as separate. I wouldn't even call it a belief.
Well, when you separate them, it doesn't fit, does it?
I don't understand. When could you
Well,
repeat?
if you see the senses in isolation, none of them fit the feeling of a belief. There has to be some kind of
Uh, I think she's saying that the five senses being separate. I said that the five senses being separate is a belief, that there is separation between them. And
Oh,
she
okay.
doesn't see how that's a belief. But I would say, can you actually experience any one of them without the others? Whereas, you know,
Mm.
you can't draw a line, can you?
But I remember talking to Bianca some time ago about how the senses can merge under certain circumstances, and she didn't get that. Uh, so if you listen to music, and you just absorb, really sink into that music, it's going to become tactile as well as audible.
No.
No, okay, no.
Yeah. I like to dance, and it's true that to dance you have to
Feel the music.
let the music in.
Yes. And you feel it.
And I feel reaction to music.
Ah, okay. Okay, yeah, that's not what the same as I'm saying. No. I want you to hear the music
It's
until your
for
body
me.
starts vibrating in the right frequency with it. Yeah.
For me, the connection is mind created.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
let the music in, and I let the mind go with the music and make the connection
Okay.
without
Yeah.
thinking.
Yes. So then so then I would say, well, the mind is the sixth sense. So there's a merging of two senses, the audible and the thinking in the mind.
And touch. Audible and touch sensation.
Yes. Yeah. Touch is tactile. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. And if I can imagine that if you're absorbed in the dancing and the music is just coursing through you, that you could also experience other senses involved. It might be a smell or it might be a taste as well, and certainly visual could be involved, but very subtly.
It
Yeah.
is more probable that I would lose the focus
Mm.
of the visual.
Yes. So losing focus, you might even shut your eyes. But even if your eyes are open, they wouldn't be focused on any one thing because of your movement. So in a way, your visual is also involved, but maybe in a not in an active way, or rather in a maybe less visual input, but it's still affected by, it's still involved in, even though it's reduced rather than increased. So being involved doesn't mean always just an increase in involvement. It might mean a decrease. So in that situation, you might withdraw from the visual to a degree. You keep just enough open so that you don't bump into other people, but you're still dancing, but you're not focused on anything visually.
Yeah, I usually dance in my room with my eyes closed.
Okay, yeah. So there you go. So there's three senses involved. Yeah. Sorry, Tyler, you're going to say something?
Oh, yeah. No, even without merging of the senses, it's still, I find difficult to isolate one sense. Not difficult, impossible to isolate one sense in experience. It's like if you have a glass of water, is the top half of the water separate from the bottom half of the water? That's kind of what it sounds like when someone asks if sight is separate from sound, because you can't
Yes.
have one. Yeah, it's so they're not in different spaces at all. There's no.
Yep. I can agree. Any experience involves such complexity that no part of it can really be isolated. It's an artificial separation to describe one part of experience and ignore the rest. But any experience is so complete because it is There's no words. It is the whole world. It is everything. It is not just the whole world, but it is the whole everything. Any experience is totally indescribable. There is every aspect of everything in any experience. But this is not helpful for people, for seekers. This is
Maybe so.
I can agree to it, but still
yeah.
I don't see the point.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's not.
What does it change?
Well, it has no point. That's right. Yeah.
I mean, maybe connection is created by the mind. Maybe separation is created by the mind. How can we know?
Exactly.
Where was it originally separated and then got connected in the mind, or was it originally connected and then got separated in the mind? How would I know?
It's not that it matters. Maybe it does. No, I don't know. It's not connected rather than separated. Only separate things can be connected. So it doesn't have any flavor of being connected because there's no separate parts to be connected. It's like I think it can be useful because when you talk about self and other and here and there, I think it can be useful for investigating that because it's like all you really have is a soup of complex experience, and then you just you scoop out a spoon of soup and you pour it into a bowl, and you don't see how it's soup.
Yeah. And
That costs a lot.
any kind of once the soup is cooked, you can't take any one element out of it. It's so merged with everything else that it's an artificial separation to say, well, I'll take the carrots out of the soup. Once they're cooked, the flavor of the carrots is right through everything. There's no,
Yeah. Even calling it a soup is strange because a soup is made of different ingredients that you
Yes.
throw in.
Yeah.
But it's like I think Rumi said something about a drop in the ocean and the ocean in a drop. I don't know what he said. That calling it the ocean makes a bit more sense.
The thing that jumped into my mind was the pointing that to talk of any aspect of anything is an artificial separation that may be useful or maybe not, but the intent would always be to appreciate even the complexity, because that still implies a whole lot of separate things mixed up, but just the whole and even there's just no words for it. Even the whole is everything suggests that it's a whole lot of things put together, but there is no way you can take any part of anything apart, including yourself and including your observations and your experience and all the rest of it. Everything is a mix that is inseparable. But even saying it's a mix implies separate things put into it. So even that's not right. But yeah. So in the end, you've just got to shut up because nothing makes any sense. Yeah. So it comes back, and there's a really interesting one. It comes back to our experience, and that implies separateness, you know, that this is my experience, or that is this experience here, implying that it's different to that experience over there.
But even that experience over there is an idea in your experience.
Yes.
So
Yeah. And it gets tricky because we say, well, then if it's an idea, in my experience, and it becomes a ridiculous thing to say that it is an idea of something that's not in my experience. So we assume that there's something happening over there, but that is still just in our experience. And the crazy thing is that we can imagine that the person over there having an experience is saying the same thing about our experience, and that still implies two different experiences.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
well, as much as
It's just when you ask if two senses are separated, the separation is already in the question.
Yes.
And but somehow it forces me to answer in the framework of the question. And that is why I couldn't go. Oh.
So recognizing that is an artificial separation, that going into adopting a false premise in order to look at the question.
Okay. I don't know. Well, I'd rather leave it here.
Okay. Hmm. Well, I'm thinking that's probably a good time to wind up. And I get approval. Thank you, Bianca, John Lee, Ramiz, Lennart, me. Thank you all.